All right, welcome everybody. Going to give this a couple minutes, let people kind of trickle in. But the Sourcepass community is showing up in full force today. This is great turnout. Jolynn, I think this is another hot topic for the group.
I think it is, especially with all the changes that we've had recently with Microsoft Teams. Super excited about the subject today.
Boy, I tell you, I can't think of anything that's been more impactful in terms of how we work than Teams over the past few years.
Right. You know, we were just I was talking with somebody this morning, and we were talking about when COVID hit, and we, we're all forced to work a different way. And, since then, it's all been Teams.
It's been Teams, right?
Love the improvements they've been making too.
Yeah. I was doing a little research just before the call here today, and the rate of adoption is just phenomenal. I think it's one of the fastest growing products in Microsoft's history. In 2019, about 20 million people were using Teams on a daily basis. Today, it's something like 300 million. So
wow.
If you think about those numbers, just staggering.
Well, I know I'm in that number because it's something, just like Outlook, I open it the first thing in the morning and I never close it. It's something that I'm in constantly. Can't live without it.
Yep, certainly changed the way we work for sure. So anyway, welcome Sourcepass community. Glad to have so many of you here today. My name is Alan Bauman, and I'm here with Jolynn Reen, who is our expert in all things Teams and Microsoft and so many other things I can't even keep track of. And we're happy to welcome you guys today. Just a little bit of housekeeping, and we're going to dive right in. So if you could get to the next slide here. So this is a new webinar series for us. So we're calling these our learning series. And so the learning series of webinars is really all about leveraging the tools that you probably already have in ways that help you be more productive and more efficient. So, most of us probably use Teams already. I'll tell you that I learn something every time I'm on one of these calls with Jolynn. So I'm looking forward to that again today. These calls are open to anybody that's a Sourcepass client. Our mission here is to make these useful to you. If you have friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from this, please, share the information. The more the merrier. Certainly within your company community, let folks know that, we're doing these. For a second session, we've got terrific attendance, so I think we're onto something that's pretty useful to folks. In addition to this, we also have a digital transformation series, which is different in terms of intent. Whereas the learning series is really more about using the tools you already have. The digital transformation series is about potentially using technology in ways that maybe you haven't in the past. So, how do you leverage technology? What are the best practices around things like cybersecurity, that sort of thing? So it's more to help you advance your use of technology. Both of them really impactful. We would encourage you to attend as many as you can. You can register for the events on our website. We'll be going through some of the upcoming events with you at the end of the session here today. But sourcepass.com is the place to go for that. These sessions are both monthly in terms of, I think there's one digital transformation series webinar each month and one learning series webinar each month. You can go to the next slide, Kat. Okay, so just real quick, and we're going to just dive into it. If you have questions, use the Q&A button. We'll get to them as we can throughout the session. And we'd also love your feedback. Sincerely, we read all of the feedback that we get, and we take all of it into account in terms of planning for upcoming sessions. You'll be getting a survey after this webinar via email. Give us your constructive thoughts. If you liked it, if there are things you think we can improve, if there are topics that you'd like us to cover in the future, let us know that too. So, Jolynn, I think I'm ready to hand it off to you. Looking forward to the sessions today.
Me too. I absolutely love these. If I could do Teams every day, I most certainly would. So, introduction to Teams. Teams, of course, is our communication tool, just so everybody knows the same things about Microsoft Teams. So Teams is what we will use to communicate, to share information, to chat with people, to do meetings, etc., etc., etc. There's so many things that Teams can do. But what I want to do today is start with some changes that have happened in Microsoft Teams, and we're going to dive into some more advanced features that are related to using this application. So I'm currently in the new version of Microsoft Teams. At the top left, you're going to see that it has this icon with the word new to it. So if your organization hasn't already updated to the latest version of Microsoft Teams, some of the features that you're going to see on my screen, you may not be seeing just yet, but I'm sure you will be eventually getting to the same version. I know every company does it a little bit different on how often they do upgrade everybody, or update, shall I say. So anyway, just so you understand that. A couple of other things I want to very briefly talk about, which are important to understand what Microsoft Teams does, especially what it's doing in the background. You can see that across the top of my screen under my search, it currently says your status is set to do not disturb. You'll only get notifications for urgent messages and from your priority contacts. The reason I'm pointing that out is because Teams reads your Outlook calendar. So in a minute, when I talk about the calendar here in Teams, we have a lot of syncing going on where we are connected with all these other applications. So we're not just using one program, which, by the way, I call Microsoft Teams my hub to access all these other programs. So I use Teams to access things related to Outlook. We share things back and forth. I get approvals. I have my Adobe Acrobat connected. I am going to show you in a minute how to add other apps to your navigation on the left-hand side as well, that menu bar that we have. Lots of different things are connected, and you're going to see that connectivity as we go through some of our topics here. So I want to start with kind of that left-hand side of the screen, go through this navigation pane, otherwise known as the menu bar, starting on the activities. Activities, depending on what it is that you're using for other applications, you could be getting notifications coming into the activities that are actually related to other programs. I'll explain a couple of these to you, but if I get an @mention, which hopefully you're using @mentions. I'm going to briefly talk about those when we talk about Teams inside Teams. But if you get an @mention from someone, it can notify you in the activity section. So the activities is where different activities which are directly related to you are going to go. Beyond what I just mentioned about the @mentions, what you're actually seeing in the middle part of my window is whatever, of course, I click on is displayed on the right-hand side. I had some BI information that I was working with, so I'm seeing some information about that BI. So when I click on it, it is automatically giving me that information on the right-hand side. If I click on this one called Final Status, and it says approved, what this is actually related to is the approvals app. There is an approvals app, which is actually part of your Microsoft suite of apps that, depending on what it is that you're utilizing, let's say that I'm in a SharePoint document library, or I open up my Teams file menu in my SharePoint document library. I'll explain that in a minute. We can actually send a file for approval. That approval is going to notify you, if you're the one that needs to approve it, it's going to notify you via email in Outlook, but it's also going to notify you here in Teams in this activity category. So we have this connectivity to the approvals process coming through a document in a SharePoint document library, which is pretty crazy. So we don't have to leave Teams to go to another app to do something. Teams is our go-to program because we are connected with all these other apps. So basically what you're seeing is I could actually go into the file that I need to review, and if I hadn't already reviewed it, approved or rejected it, I would be able to do so in this window without having to go to the app called Approvals, without having to go to Outlook to do it. I have access to it right here in Teams. So I encourage you to look at from the left-hand side to the middle all the way to the top right on whatever it is that you're opened in Microsoft Teams, because you never know what you're going to find. If I go to a different item in this category for my approvals, it's just really kind of showing me some of the past approvals that I have. Eventually, those will no longer be a recent, so they will disappear because it only keeps the most recent. But let's talk about chat. As a matter of fact, right now, I actually have my chat has a red circle. And if you were to see my status bar, but I'm in PowerPoint right now, so you're not seeing my status bar, but that's okay. Your icon for Teams will always give you a circle, a red circle with a number in it to tell you how many notifications you have in the application. So I know that I have one because I can see that there's a 1 in my chat category. But if I were to have a missed call or anything else, I would, of course, see those in their category on the left-hand side as well. So if I go to chat, I'm going to see more than just chats. And chats can be with a single person or, of course, group chats. Once again, you click on the middle part of the window to display it. On the middle of part on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the contents of it, which I want to point out something about this. Mine is going from top to bottom. When chat first came out, you only had the capability of doing things from the bottom up. They now have the capability of changing that. And when I get to the settings, I'll show you where you can actually change that. So if you want to be reading from top to bottom instead of bottom to top in your chats, with the most recent going to the top, you can, of course, change that. You will have your settings at the top right, just so you're aware. I also have Copilot. So I'm seeing a Copilot icon on the right-hand side. So always look to the top right to see what your choices are. So when I'm in a chat, I can, of course, respond to the people that I'm chatting with. But I want to point out a couple of things about chatting that I'm not sure everybody knows about. Let's say that you go to chat with somebody who's out of the office. They're gone for the rest of the day. They're not coming back till tomorrow, or maybe they're not coming back till next Monday. Did you know that you can actually delay that chat? You can actually know if a person is available, of course, by their profile. And when you go to create a chat or you go to create an email, it's going to let you know if it's outside of their working hours and different things. So I'm hesitating on student 1. And I can see it was last seen 13 minutes ago, but they're free all day. So it's okay for me to chat with them right now because I know they're not busy. They're not in a meeting or, out of the office, things like that. But the other thing is, if for some reason the computer told me that that person happened to be gone, I could delay my chat. So this person sent me a message. I want to join the PM session with you next week. Great. Do you want to present the essentials for project management? So I can type a chat back, but if I know that person's not even at their desk, they're not in the office, do I want to send it right now? Probably not. We have to take advantage of the time of when they are available and not bombard them with things when they're not even there. So on the bottom right, when you go to your paper airplane, that's what I call it, the send button. If you right click on that, you can actually choose when do you want to send it. It's just like in Outlook when you do your delay delivery. So I can say I want to send it on this date, this time, and then click continue. I can then continue to finish my chat. I can attach files, do all those normal things. I could even use loop components and stuff. All kinds of things can be done in your chat. But when I'm done, I just click my paper airplane for send again. Then it's going to wait until that date and time to actually send it. And you'll notice that there's a little, it looks like a little timer on the right-hand side of it. That's to let us know that it's a delayed delivery. So just like in Outlook email, I do the same thing with delayed delivery. I do the same thing in chat now. One other thing that I wanted to mention about chatting that not everybody is taking advantage of, and I think we should, is if you go down to the bottom, you have all these different icons. I'm not real big into the emojis and stuff. Loop components are wonderful. We should do a session on that. But I want to click on this exclamation mark. Kind of forgot what that was called. I'm going to click on this exclamation mark because normally when you send a chat, it goes as a standard chat. But what if you want to send it as important? You want to actually tag it just like we do in an email and put the red exclamation mark with it. You can actually mark it as being important. Or what if you're trying to get a hold of that person right now? You could actually send it as urgent. The difference between the urgent is it's going to be in red. It's also going to send, as you can see, it says notify recipient every 2 minutes for 20 minutes. So they're going to get that banner notification at the bottom right of their screen popping up every 2 minutes for 20 minutes and then it will stop. They are also going to be receiving an email message letting them know that they have an urgent chat. So if they happen to be away from their desk, maybe they are in the break room and they got stopped by somebody, whatever, and you're trying to urgently get a hold of them because the system went down, whatever, you could actually do an urgent chat to them. Urgent chats, of course, if they're using Teams on their phone, it's going to come through on their phone as well. And I do use it on my phone quite often. So just so you can see, an urgent chat can be used. If you just want to send it as important, feel free to do that as well. Now, I'm not really going to send this. I'm going to click the X to cancel it. When you have these different features that you're using, of course, you're going to see that as you have your conversation, what you said, what they said, it's going to be on the left side, right side. That is what you see by default, but just so you know, you can use a condensed view. You can even change your view in the chat now. So if you want to see everything lined up to the left-hand side, that is an option for you to do. I personally don't like to do that. I like the separation of my texting and chatting. I don't like it all to be lined up to the left-hand side. I think it's easier to read when they're separated, but just so you know, that is something you can change. If I go to the top right and click on the ... menu, you're going to get your drop-down menu. Look at what your choices are. So every time you're in a different part of Teams, always go to the top right to see what your choices are. So you can search for a chat. You could schedule a meeting with that person that you're chatting with or that group of people. You could do screen sharing, which will start an immediate meeting with them. You have all different kinds of things that you can be using. Take advantage of what Teams is offering us. It's pretty cool. But let me go back to the left-hand side. And when I'm here in this chat, you're getting more than just chatting options. What you're going to see is your recent meetings. So if I go to any of these that have the icon with this little calendar, those are previous meetings that I've done through Teams. These are meetings that were not connected to a channel. I'll explain that in a second. But every time I click on any of these, you're going to see the contents of the meeting on the right-hand side. So I get the history of those meetings. So every time I'm clicking on one, I can come back and see that information. So just to show you some of the details, because depending on what it is that you set up for your meeting and what tools you're using, you can have different tabs going across the top. So what you're going to see is you can have the history of the chat, which gives you a general rundown of the meeting itself. So when did it start? Was it recorded? I can even access the recording from this chat window. But if I want to go into files, this would give us any files that were shared during that meeting. If I go into recap, recap does a recap of the actual meeting itself. Pretty cool to have access to this. You can see different transcripts and @ mentions on the right-hand side. Love these new features. We should do a session just on meetings alone because there's so many new things we have. You could go into attendance. If you were using breakout rooms or whiteboards or Q&A or anything like that, you can have those tabs across the top. So this is going to give you quick, easy access to any of the historical meetings that you have had through Microsoft Teams. Absolutely love that. But you can see that I have other things as well in my chat. So chat is a communication tool, not just a conversation back and forth with one or more people. I also have my DocuSign information here as well. And then you're going to see these two where it says Outlook 365 getting started. These were actually some other meetings, but they had that reminder icon instead of the meeting icon until I clicked on them. Just so you know, those were meetings. But enough about chat for right now. Let me go to the next category on the left-hand side, which is actually Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is where we can, whoever has rights to, can create a team that can be org-wide, it can be private, it can be public, and we can communicate with our coworkers through that team. A team is set up, of course, by using channels, and every channel in the team can have tabs. Always plan before you build and limit who can actually build the teams. Another session for that, but just so you're aware. I'm in a team called IT department, and I just went to this help desk channel. And I can see across the top, I have all these different tabs. By default, when a channel is created, depending on how the team is created, you will only be seeing the post tab, which is like a chat just for the members of that specific team and or for the members of that specific channel, because we can have private channels. I'll show you that in just a second. Excuse me. But we also have the Files tab. Just a brief mention, every time a team is created, it's also creating a SharePoint site. So when we come to this Files tab, no matter which channel you're in, no matter which team you're in, you'll have a Files tab. The Files tab is a SharePoint document library. So you can actually have multiples in one channel. But every tab is directly related to the name of the channel. All channels are directly related to the name of the team. That's how we want to organize everything. But you can have these tabs created, add new ones besides the two that come by default. You can actually be adding all these other tabs. These are going to be other applications. You could have connection directly to a SharePoint site, a website, any URL that you want to connect to. You also can have, of course, Microsoft Planner connections. You can be having forms that are accessible. This is a Microsoft form. I also have a list. This is called an issue tracker, and this is actually coming from a Microsoft list, which can be accessed here directly in Teams or directly in its application as well. So a lot of these are residing within the team itself, but can be accessed through their native program as well. So it's pretty cool how we have access to all these. So anything that's related to whatever channel you're in, every team member can have access to these. By default, they will, unless you create a private channel. So under my accounting department team, I have this channel called managers. It has this padlock icon. This is a by invitation only. So we can create private channels so that we can have confidential information and chatting and different things being shared with just a specific group of people. We create these by creating a new channel. So right clicking on your team is one way, one of many ways to create a new channel. When you click add channel, you can then choose the channel type. From this channel type, standard is by default, but you also can do a shared channel, as you can see from the menu. It says people or teams in your organization or outside the organization could have access. So this technically could be a channel that you want to share with other people that aren't a part of this team. So becoming very popular. But we also have this private, where private is if you are currently a member of the team, you can be a member of this private channel. If you're not a member, you don't even see it on the list. So just so you could see where you could create that. I'm not going to create a new one, but this tax information is actually a shared channel. So I have this one that I can share because I wanted to share it with my accountant who might be in a different total building or total different domain, whatever the case might be. You can always have shared channels as well. So not just our normal channels where everybody's going to have access to them. But when it comes to kind of working in these teams, there's definitely some things that I want you to be aware of. If you have the rights to actually create a team, I want you to go before you invite anybody. So when you create the team, it gives you a wizard to kind of walk through to name it and do these other things. What I want you to be thinking about is before you build it, think about who's going to need access to it. What types of channels will you need? What types of tabs, apps will you need to have accessible through all those channels? But you also need to think about the permission levels. Permissions, of course, are a very important part of using all of our applications these days. If I right click again on my accounting department team, I'm going to go into manage team. And this is something that I do right away when the team is created. Before I ever invite anybody to join it, I have to come in here, because what you're going to want to do is go to the settings. From the settings, you're going to see where you can change the team details. You can give it an icon. If you don't want the picture, you could actually give it your own image. It uses icons. But the thing that I want to actually point out is this member permissions. Under the member permissions, this particular team that I'm in, I turned off all the member permissions. Sorry. But by default, all of these would be checked. And this was scary to me when I first saw this, because we don't really want our members, which are people in your organization that have access to the team, we don't always want the members to be able to create channels or delete channels or create custom apps or delete our apps that we have added in our team. Usually we want to keep that just for the owners of the team to be able to do. Just think about any member being able to delete something that everybody is using, and they might even do it by mistake. So make sure that you're checking out what the settings are that you really want them to be using. The only two that I keep checked is give members the option to delete their messages and edit their messages, because that's referring to their chats. If they put something in a chat, they can change it. They could delete it if they want to. I think that's okay. So make sure that you're checking this out. Another thing that I want to mention while I'm in here is tags. One thing that I think is very important on using software in general these days is using @mentions. There was a time back when I first started with Microsoft Teams, and I started using @mentions, and I was in a post and I needed to @mention 5 people. They were all part of the social media group for this marketing department that we were working with, and we wanted to make sure that everybody in social media got the notification, they saw it. So we wanted it to stand out to them. So I did an @mention 5 different times with each individual person. I'm going to do it all the time. So instead, we now have the capability, which was added a long time ago now, but we have the capability of creating custom tags, which allow us to give a @mention a name, like social media, and then choose the members from our team that we want to be a part of that @mention, so that we do not need to @mention multiple people differently. We can @mention the group all at one time. So here where it says tags are managed by, usually I do just team owners. I don't usually have the members managing tags, but you could have members and/or team members. Now, how would we actually manage those? If I right click on the name of the team, I can go into manage tags. From here, you can see that I have one set up already that's called accounts payable. So if I want to have, 3 people that get tagged every time I do @accounts payable, then it can have multiple people to them. If I want to add a new tag, I just create tag. Then I'm going to give it a name like social media. I'm going to choose who I want to be a part of it. So I can choose any of my users. I don't have many members of this, but just so you could see, I could add in different people that would be part of the tag, and then just click create. Then when I'm in, so let me go back to my accounting department. Let's say I'm in accounts payable and I'm going to do a post. I'm going to click post and I'm going to do an @. As soon as I do that I can actually use social media as it's a little slow here, but it will come up with social media so that social media can actually be, sorry, I'm doing it in the wrong spot. Social media can actually be the @mention, where it's going to go to multiple people. I think people aren't taking advantage of that enough. I think it's a pretty cool feature. I'll just leave that as that for the @mentions for that. But you definitely want to be thinking about planning before you build. Last thing on the teams before I leave this category here is I have a team here called Clinic. This is actually a SharePoint team. So in SharePoint, when I created my intranet, I had a department called Clinic. And when I created the SharePoint site, I created it as a team site. It automatically got added into Microsoft Teams. I can access it directly through SharePoint, or I can access it directly here with a regular team or with a team created directly through SharePoint. So from here, I have a vaccinations channel, and you can see that I have different things going across the tabs at the top. If I click on this Clinic SharePoint site, this is actually going to show me the SharePoint site related to the clinic. So I can have quick, easy access to it. And you can see I'm getting my hyperlink so I can interactively be in my SharePoint site. And technically, I can do that from any channel. I can have a tab going to a SharePoint site. But I also have a website link directly to legal documents. This tab at the top called Legal Documents is actually taking me to a document library within that SharePoint site. So just to kind of think about the connectivity that we have with all of these other applications, we're not just using Microsoft Teams. We're actually utilizing several other applications within one program. So there's great connectivity with Microsoft Teams. But it's not just Microsoft Teams that if I create a SharePoint site and it's a team SharePoint site, I could still be going to my accounting department. I could go to my accounts payable. I can go to the files tab where I have all these files that I'm sharing with my team. And if I want to use SharePoint and see the features directly related to a document library, I have Open in SharePoint on my menu going across the top, because every time a team is created, it creates a SharePoint site. If I click Open in SharePoint, it's automatically opening the SharePoint site directly related to my accounting department. So here's that document library directly within SharePoint. I have access on the left-hand side. I could go back into conversations. I could go into the shared notebook that is already available every time a team is created. I could add additional pages to the site. But now I have access to all the bells and whistles that a document library gives us. If I right-click on any of these, I get my pop-up menu. I could use my automate features like request for sign-off, which that notification came into Microsoft Teams, into my activities. So I have access to all of these. Everything is available. But if I'm back in Microsoft Teams and I go to that same file and do a right-click, I get a lot of the same features, but not everything is here. So I'm missing that feature that I just was hesitating on for the request sign off. I can't do that as of today here in Microsoft Teams. Will that change in the future? I'm hoping it does, but as of today, I would need to go to SharePoint document library to have access to that, not just here through Teams, just so you're aware. So I really like that connectivity that we have through SharePoint. It creates the Microsoft group. We get the SharePoint site. So if we wanted to be putting other things out in SharePoint, we could utilize that or just stay right here in Microsoft Teams and use it. Okay. Now, I may come back and talk about something else in Teams itself, but I want to go back to the left-hand side. The left-hand side on our navigation pane, I'm going to go to Calendar. From the calendar, of course, it is syncing with your Outlook calendar, so you are going to see anything that you have created from the calendar in Outlook is going to be here as well. But what if you wanted to create a new Teams meeting and you wanted to actually do it with the accounting department, and you want that meeting to be with the accounts payable channel? I'm going to go to tomorrow, Thursday. Yeah, tomorrow's Thursday. Forget what day of the week it is. I'm going to go to tomorrow and I'm going to say I want to do this at 3 o'clock. As soon as I click on that time of that date in my Teams calendar, it comes up with my new meeting. From here, I can be putting in what the meeting is. So maybe we're going to do a meeting about the new project. And then I could put in who's required to attend, of course, change the date and time, those normal things that you would do. But what's going to be different here in Microsoft Teams calendar that we don't get in Outlook, we can add a channel. When you click add channel, you can choose the name of the team. So I can choose my accounting department. I can choose the channel I want to connect it to. And then I could put in my agenda and all those normal things that you would do. I'm just going to click send. So I attached it to this accounting. Once I click send, of course, anybody that I invited, they'll be able to, of course, approve or reject if they're going to come or not. It would automatically add it to their calendar, those normal things. But what about when you start the meeting? When people join the meeting, what's going to end up happening is back in that team. So if I jump back to the team and I go to accounting and I go to accounts payable, what's going to happen is here in the post tab, it's going to actually show that the meeting has actually started. As a matter of fact, in a second, it's a little bit slow for whatever reason right at this moment, but it's going to actually show that meeting in the post tab of this channel. And when I join the meeting, when it starts, next to the name of the channel is going to be the video camera icon. So when someone comes in to this team, they're going to see right away that there's a meeting going on in that channel. They would then be able to click on that channel, and from the post tab, they can actually click join because it's going to be in the post. It would automatically give them access to join that meeting. So they don't have to necessarily get an invitation. Although if you want it to be blocked on their calendar, you still want to give them, invite them so that it is on their calendar. Because if it's just connected to the channel, it's not blocking that time on their calendar. What happens then when you do that meeting, just so you're aware, is everything related to that meeting is going to be accessible through that post tab. We'd be able to click on the name of that meeting and it would automatically take you in to the calendar to that appointment. So I'm going to edit just so you can see it would come back to this window. Anything that you would use during that meeting will be in the tabs at the top. So the chat history, the attendance, whiteboards, breakouts, Q&A, anything else that you would use, because you can use several different apps during your meeting now. Any of those would be accessible at the top, but it's all available directly through the channel. Using a channel to conduct your meetings is a great idea if it's related to that channel, because everything is there. If you share any files or anything during that meeting, they're going to be in the files tab for that specific channel. So it's just a great way to keep everything organized in one specific location. We jump around too much, and I think this keeps us grounded with where things are going to be when we're done. Okay. Of course, your calendar is always going to be your go-to to go back and access that information as well. So good habit. But I just want to mention also, totally different topic we can do on this, but when you go to create a Teams meeting, there's a new meeting icon at the top right. If you just click the icon, you're going to get a standard Teams meeting. If you click the down arrow, you get different choices. These are actually templates that are built into Microsoft Teams that, depending on the type of meeting you really want to have, like today we're doing live. That's one of the options that we have available through Microsoft Teams meetings. So it depends on how many people, do you want certain settings automatically to happen? Do you want to be able to have them register for the session that you're doing? You can choose exactly the type of meeting you're going to do so that you get the template with the features related to that type of meeting. So we have, as you can see, webinar where it says host interactive event with registration. We have town hall, we have virtual appointment, we have controlled content meeting. So we get different choices. Now, these are what we are getting as of today through Microsoft Teams channel. or I'm sorry, calendar, not channel, calendar. If I'm in Outlook, just so you're aware, if I go back to my calendar, and I'll show this on my screen here, when I'm in the calendar in Outlook, if I go to create a new meeting, I'm just going to open up a new meeting here. When I go to create a new meeting, of course, I have my Teams meeting icon up on my ribbon, and then it would turn it into a Teams meeting. But I have this drop down arrow. Just like the drop down arrow in the calendar and Teams, I can actually choose to schedule a meeting from that drop down as well. If I choose to schedule a meeting, which I don't know where my menu went there, usually on my, there we go. I can go into my meeting options, which meeting options can be set up before the meeting starts or after you start the meeting, after you join it. But this is going to allow you to choose things like, can people bypass the lobby? Should their microphones be on? Are we going to be using Q&A? Are we going to be using, do we want an attendance report? All of these details can be saved with the meeting you are creating. So you want to take advantage of what the computer is going to offer you. Now, I'm not going to actually save that, just so you know. It would add it to my calendar. I'd see it here in Outlook, just like I'm seeing this meeting about the new project, which, by the way, I can double click and open here in Outlook, and I can open it in directly in Teams, but I'm not going to be able to do anything with the channel here in Outlook. So if you want to connect a meeting to a channel, make sure you do it in Teams. Okay. But let's get back to Microsoft Teams. Back to the left-hand side again. When you go to the calls category, you may get an icon that says you have a notification in calls. What this is referring to is you can actually make phone calls directly through Teams. So if I've been chatting with someone, this is an example of how I use calls. I was chatting with a coworker, and it got to the point where I just wanted to talk to her because I wanted to show her something on my screen. And it isn't a file that we have shared anywhere, or maybe it's in a shared location that she doesn't have access to. What I did was I was chatting back and forth with her. Right from chat, I could go to the top right and I could click on the phone receiver icon, or I could come in here to calls and call the person. But this is actually showing you the historical information of your calls. If I want to call someone, I can even do it from Outlook. Hesitate on their profile circle. You'll get the icon for the phone receiver. There's a video icon that you could do as well if you want it to be a video call right away. But an audio call can turn into a video call. You could share your screen. It just doesn't give you the physical meeting features, but it gives you all those other capabilities. So I don't use my phone to call someone as much as I used to because I want to share my screen with them. I want to be able to have these other features that we don't get when we're using just a regular phone. But what I like about this is I can always go back and see, here's a missed call that I had from a specific person. Here's a call that I had that was outgoing. I could see if I had any missed incoming calls. But up here at the top, we have these different tabs. If I click on voicemail, if I call someone, by default, after 20 seconds, it's going to jump into voicemail. And from their voicemail, I can actually leave them a message. They will get an email notification letting them know that they missed a call and here's their voicemail. They'll get notified here in Microsoft Teams as well. So they get notified all over the place, so they're not going to miss your voicemail. The voicemail will be stored in here, just so you're aware, so you can always come back to it. Once you go to that voicemail on the right-hand side, you can actually play it. You have the ability of being able to read it and play the audio of that voicemail. So anyway, just so you know, that call features are a great option to use. I definitely do like that voicemail capability. But I want to go to OneDrive. As a matter of fact, yes.
Do you mind if I jump in here? We have a question.
Absolutely.
I think that's kind of relatively appropriate here. So the question is, can you edit and customize the preloaded emails that are set up for webinar registrations, reminders, and confirmations?
Yes. Yes, you can. Those are becoming more and more accessible to people and more customizable as they are being improved as well. So if you go to use a feature and it's not there, let Microsoft know. The more people that they hear it from, the more they're likely to incorporate it. But yes, they are making customization options available. Good question. But when you come to the navigation pane on the left-hand side and you click on OneDrive, if you don't see OneDrive, it says the word files. That means that your Microsoft Teams has not been updated. But when you come to OneDrive or files, what it gives you is the updated part of it is exactly like your OneDrive if you were to go to the application on its own. So you're literally in OneDrive. So you're going to see on the left-hand side here, I have my navigation pane, which would match exactly what my navigation pane would look like if I were in the OneDrive app. This is my recent files. If I want to see everything, I go to my files. My file shows me every folder. I even have access to my SharePoint document libraries that I did a shortcut to, which also can, of course, include your Teams file tabs. They can be a shortcut also, which can be accessible through your OneDrive, which I do that a lot through File Explorer as well. But I can access anything just like if I were going to my OneDrive app. So I don't go to OneDrive. I either use it from File Explorer, but if I'm in Teams, I do it right here. So here's that legal documents that I was talking about earlier. If I go into legal documents, these are the same folders and files coming from my SharePoint document library. If I open any of these files, by default, which of course means it can be changed, it's going to open that file directly here in Teams. It's using the online version of the application, but it is Microsoft Teams where it opens it. It doesn't open it in another window automatically. When you're done, you go to the top right, click close, and you're back where you were when you opened it. So I love that capability of not having to go to another app to work on something. If I'm already here in Teams, I can access it directly here. So this to me has saved me so much time and headaches. I liked the old file capability that it gave us, which it gave us access to OneDrive, it gave us access to SharePoint, but why have to learn something different when we already know OneDrive? So now it's exactly a duplicate of OneDrive. Fantastic feature, love it. But let's go to the left-hand side again, because this navigation pane can be different depending on your rights. I happen to be an admin for my teams, so I am seeing the admin icon. So I won't go into that today, but just so you can see I get access to that. But what I wanted to mention was the ... menu. When you click on this View More Apps, this is going to show you the default Microsoft apps that you have access to. You can see I have Copilot that I could open directly here. I could go into my workflows. I could open up Excel. I have my approvals. Look at all these different options. There's a couple of these that I actually work with on a pretty regular basis. So let me actually show you some of those. Actually, Task by Planner and To Do is probably one of my most common. So, oops, sorry, I keep clicking on my center there. I'm going to click on this Task by Planner and To Do. What this will do is automatically open that application, which of course there's new features coming to this as well. I can go into the new feature, but I'm not going to today. But just so you could see, you have access to anything related to, did you put things in your to-do that you need to, a task that you need to work on, or do you have a bunch of tasks that are assigned to you? I don't have to go to Outlook to open up to-dos or log into the app online or go to Planner online or To Do online. I have access to it right here through Microsoft Teams. And I use it so often that I usually have this pinned to my left-hand side. So if I go to the icon on the left-hand side for Task by Planner and To Do, if I right-click on it, I can left-click on Pin so that it stays here. Otherwise, if I click on something else on the navigation pane, the icon would have disappeared for Task by Planner and To Do. But I really like being able to not have to leave Teams to go open something else. Especially things like Planner, I would have to go to the internet browser, log into my Microsoft account, open up Planner, or if I had a shortcut for it, that kind of a thing. But why do I want to do that when I can access it right here? So this is what you would see if you go to Outlook and click on To Do. You're going to see exactly these same things that I'm seeing on my left-hand side. So if I go to my important category, it's going to show me any tasks that I have tagged as important. If I go to Assigned to Me, these are the tasks that I'm assigned to, no matter which source they're coming from. Whether they were assigned to me through a loop or they were assigned to me through a team, etc., I'll have access to all of that. So I don't have to leave Teams to do other things. But there's another one that I want to talk about that I use through Teams all the time. So I'm going to go back to my menu on the left-hand side. And one of these is actually, I'm going to just type it in to find it quicker. I typed an M. I want to add this one called Meet. I'm going to click on Meet. If you have not used this yet, this has become my best friend. I love this Meet feature. Once again, usually I have this pinned on my left-hand side, so I would right-click on the icon on the left, click on Pin, and it would stay here on my left-hand side. But what exactly is Meet? Meet is actually an app that is going to take your appointments, upcoming and past appointments, and give them to you in a dashboard look. So I can see these are all, so next I have this, I can join meetings from here. So I can see everything coming and I can open my calendar if I need to get more details. It gives me scroll bar so I can keep scrolling through my next meetings and things like that. But it's really kind of what's coming up this next week. Then down below, I have access to all my different meetings. And it's categorized, grouping them together based on their dates, or I can go into content related to the meetings, or I can go just to the recordings for any of the meetings. So I have quick, easy access to everything meeting related in a dashboard look. I have been using this since it came out, and at first I'm like, well, I don't even know if I'll use this. Totally wrong. I 100% use this all the time. That's why I keep it pinned on the left-hand side. But if I wanted to create a new meeting, or if I want to do an impromptu meeting through Teams, I have my choices up at the top right. So if I wanted to do a meeting right now and invite people to it, I could click Meet Now. It's going to automatically start when I change the name of it. It would automatically start when I click Start Meeting. I could then, of course, invite people to it, copy a link and email it to them, or if I was chatting with them, give them the link or wherever I want to put it, and we could automatically be in a meeting right at this moment. If I want to schedule a meeting, of course, I have access to new meeting from here as well, or I can click on the drop down and I can do any of these templates for our meetings too. So we get access to a lot of different things in one central location called Teams. So the left-hand side is going to be your go-to. But one of the big things, I think a lot of people really kind of start with chatting in Teams. But when I want to go back to and talk a little bit more detail on today, which will be available in the handout that you'll have access to, is I want to go back and talk more about the team side, the management side of things. Because if you are going to be the responsible party to manage your teams, your channels, and your tabs, I want to go back into a team and show you some features that I think are going to be important to understand. So earlier I mentioned right-clicking on the name of the team is going to give you a pop-up menu. From here, you could add new members, owners, or guests. You could be adding in new channels. You can even get a link to the team and share it with somebody to invite them. You could leave the team, but you shouldn't leave it if you're the owner and you're the only owner. You can manage those tags, as I mentioned earlier, or this is an option for you to delete the team. So if you created the team and you just created it to practice, when you're done, delete the team. So the team, when you delete it, just so you're aware, can be restored. We can restore channels, we can restore teams that are deleted. I think it's 93 days is our default setting for when we can, how long we can go back and restore things. But that can be changed in every organization. But only administrators can go back and restore a team. So if you do delete it, you decide you do want to keep it, talk to IT. But to manage a channel, right click on the channel. So it's really a matter of right-clicking on the team, the channel, or the app to have access to what it is that you can control. So when it comes to channels, you can actually modify their notifications that you get. You could pin it so that it goes to the top of your teams list. So if it's something that you're actively in all the time, instead of having to go to the hierarchy, you could pin it. You can also hide it. So if this is a channel that you don't really use, you're not really taking advantage of it because it's not really your channel, you could always hide it so it's not taking up space on your screen. There's an email address for every channel. So you could actually get the email address and share it with other people so that they could email the group. The email will go into the post. It also goes to the actual group that is created through Microsoft. You go to Outlook on the left-hand side, you go to groups, you can access the email through there or just through the post of the channel as well. You can also make workflows directly through here. So if you want to create a workflow that is directly related to this channel, we now have access to that. And you can delete the channel if you have rights to do so. And that's where you want to be careful and not give out too many rights. But if you right click on a tab, depending on the tab itself, you're going to get different choices here. Renaming, removing it from the tabs up at the top. Changing their settings depending on what it is. You can't right click on posts or files. You can't manage those. They're there always. But any of them that you add in, that someone has added in, you can right click and manage those. So it's always going to be a right click to manage any of the channels, the tabs, or the teams. One thing that I forgot to mention also when it comes to these teams before we finish out today is another way a team can be created. And this is going to change here in a short couple of months. But I have this one called commercial construction. I actually created that through the online Microsoft project. When I created it through the web app, it automatically creates a team as well. So lots of different ways a team can actually be created. Alan, did you have someone with a question?
Actually, we do have a couple questions here, Jolynn. And if anybody has any more questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A area. And you can certainly follow up with your CSM or get in touch with us after the session if you had any other questions or needs here for sure. So two of them here, Jolynn. The first one is, it says, I have two email addresses for work. Outlook works fine with both, but Teams doesn't. Any thoughts?
Well, that's changing. You're going to actually be able to have multiple accounts with Teams in one team setting without having to switch. So whichever one you are physically logged into based on your account with Azure, that's the one that it uses by default for your Teams account. But if you have people chatting with you in two different accounts, you can have dual accounts now. Like I can have an account with Sourcepass. And if I do, I don't have to go back to my profile. This is a new feature that's just coming out with Teams. I don't have to go back to my profile and open up that other account. I'm going to be able to access them all at one time here. Microsoft is just releasing this feature. So hopefully that will help eliminate that. Okay.
All right, and the next one, when setting up a meeting with multiple participants, what is the easiest way to see everyone's calendar availability? Easier in Teams or Outlook?
Both, because they both use the same thing. So basically, if I go back to Calendar and I say I want to do a new meeting and I'm going to invite other people to it, what you want to think about is that scheduling assistant. So in Outlook and here in Teams, you have access to the scheduling assistant. So whoever you are inviting, if they're part of your domain, is the key. If they're part of your domain, you'll be able to see their availability. If they're not part of your domain, you could use bookings. Whole nother topic. Otherwise, they have to be a part of your, there's so many topics that we could be covering. But you know, it's the scheduling assistant both in Outlook and in Teams. Thank goodness we have that in Teams also. So hope that helped.
It's fantastic, Jolynn. And I am taking notes throughout the session with a bunch of great upcoming webinar ideas. So
well, I want to mention one more thing before we close out here. When you go to your profile at the top right, when you're in Microsoft Teams, that's where you can access different features. So this has changed a little bit with the new update. If you click on your profile, you can actually change your availability and things like that. You can choose your work location, which is great because they see the icon. So if you're working remotely and things, they can see the icon. But you also have the ... menu to get into your settings now. If you go into your settings from that menu, it's now a navigation pane. It's not a window that pops up, but you want to go through every one of these options so that this is where you could see when you go to a channel, do you want to show the recent activities at the top, or do you want them to be at the bottom? You can work with your out of office assistant. This is where you can go to calls and set up your recording if you don't want the default. Everything is managed now through here. So you want to be checking this out. If you've never been in here before, definitely check it out. Make sure you have the settings for what you want it to do, not what it does by default. Okay, last thing. That was the last thing I'll mention. I could go all day.
All right. Well, that's great. I know for one, I'm going to check out this Meet app. I think that's really cool. So as usual, some good takeaways for everybody here, I'm sure. All right. So just real quick, here are the upcoming events, digital transformation series, couple happening later on this month, both dealing with backup and disaster recovery. If that's something that's of interest to you, go to the website, sign up. And then next month, as part of the learning series, we're going to be doing a Windows 11 Edge with Copilot session, which I think is going to be really interesting as we start to see more and more of Copilot. And then in May, we're going to do Microsoft Excel Beyond the Basics. And, I'll tell you, for as long as I've used Excel, I continue to learn new things every time we do these sessions. So I guarantee you that even if you think you're an Excel expert, you will get something from it. So hope to see you guys at some of the upcoming sessions. Is that the last slide? I think it is. Yeah. And if you need help, obviously just reach out to us. We're happy to help you with any of this stuff. But appreciate it, Jolynn. Thank you as always, and thank you to the Sourcepass community for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.